The heavy canvas duffel bag weighs exactly 22 pounds. It holds $10 million in used, non-sequential American $100 bills. You are 27 years old, wearing a bespoke Italian suit that is currently clinging to your sweating back in the suffocating 98-degree heat of a military tent deep in the North Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Across the folding wooden table sits Commandant Casa, a warlord responsible for the massacre of 3 farming villages last month. He is drinking imported sparkling water. Next to you is your local translator, a 20-year-old university student named Elias, trembling so violently his knees rattle against the table leg. Your encrypted satellite phone vibrates against the wood. It is a text message from your Director of Operations in Geneva. Secure the heterogenite concession. Do not return empty. The brutal mathematics of the jungle crystallize in your mind. If you hand the bag over, Casa will use the $10 million to buy heavy artillery from Russian smugglers, turning the entire Kivu basin into a slaughterhouse to maintain his grip on the cobalt pits. If you refuse, Casa's guards, currently aiming rusted AK-47s at Elias's chest, will execute the boy right in front of you, and you will be left to rot in a shallow trench. You look at the heavy canvas bag. You look at Elias's terrified, pleading eyes. A war erupts in your conscience, but your survival instinct takes the wheel. You push the $10 million across the splintered wood. You protect your own pulse and the boy's life, and you abandon the province to the fire. Casa smiles, his teeth stained brown with tobacco. He pulls the bag into his lap. You stand up, adjust your tie, and walk back to your idling Land Cruiser without looking back. Level 1. For the next 8 months, your reward for securing the Kivu concession is a permanent relocation to the regional logistics hub in Kigali, Rwanda. You're a field sourcing analyst. Your job is alchemy. You sit in a concrete office overlooking a dusty depot, tasked with transforming blood-stained conflict minerals into clean, ethically sourced components for the global technology market. The transport trucks arrive at midnight, groaning under the weight of thousands of tons of raw heterogenite ore dug from Casa's illegal pits. International regulations strictly demand that every bag of ore carries a physical barcode certifying it was mined without human rights abuses. You buy stolen rolls of the clean tags from corrupt government mine inspectors for $500 a roll. You stand in the suffocating heat of the warehouse, watching teenage laborers rip the dirty tags off the burlap sacks and attach the pristine, legitimate barcodes. One afternoon, a local logistics clerk named Beatrice notices the massive discrepancy in the shipping manifests. She holds up a ledger showing that a supposedly clean, artisanal mine producing 50 tons a month is somehow exporting 400 tons. She tells you she is going to report the anomaly to Global Witness in London. She believes you will help her. She looks at your tailored suit and believes you are a good man who simply missed an accounting error. You do not argue with her. You thank her for her diligence. That evening, you authorize a $15,000 wire transfer from a discretionary expense account to the personal bank account of the regional police captain. You send him a fabricated dossier showing Beatrice embezzling company funds. She is arrested at her desk the next morning. She screams your name as the police drag her to a transport van. You take a slow sip of your coffee and continue typing an email. You protect the supply chain. You abandon her to a decade in a Rwandan prison. Level 2. Your flawless management of the Kigali transit route earns you an elevation to the Middle East. You're transferred to a glass-walled corner office in the Dubai Multi-Commodities Center. You are a logistics director.
The physical mud and diesel fumes are permanently replaced by immaculate marble floors and the silent hum of central air conditioning. You do not touch the ore anymore, you touch the money. The commandant in the jungle requires a steady stream of capital to maintain his grip on the cobalt pits, but international sanctions strictly forbid transferring funds to known warlords. You build a financial labyrinth to bypass the United States Treasury. You establish a network of shell companies in Mauritius and the British Virgin Islands. You utilize trade-based money laundering, generating immaculate corporate invoices that show your firm purchasing $8 million of heavy agricultural machinery from a dummy corporation in Cyprus. The machinery does not exist. The money flows cleanly through the international banking system, washes through the Cyprus accounts, and lands directly in Casa's offshore war chest. An auditor from an international maritime insurance firm flags the Cyprus transaction. He is a meticulous British expatriate named Hughes. He schedules a meeting with you, carrying a thick binder of discrepancies. He is preparing to freeze the accounts and notify Interpol. You run a quiet background check through a private corporate intelligence firm. You discover Hughes has a crippling gambling addiction and owes $400,000 to an illegal syndicate in Macau. You meet him at a high-end steakhouse. You do not threaten to break his legs. You hand him a manila envelope containing the digital deed to a fully funded offshore trust that miraculously wipes out his debt. You slide a contract across the table, offering him a highly paid, zero-responsibility board seat on one of your shell companies. He stares at the contract, his hands shaking violently. He picks up the pen. You protect the financial architecture. You abandon the integrity of the global banking system, turning a watchdog into a lapdog.
Level 3. You ascend to the corporate headquarters in Geneva. You are the vice president of global sourcing. You wear suits tailored in Milan and sit in boardrooms overlooking the Alps. The global demand for cobalt and lithium skyrockets as Silicon Valley accelerates the production of electric vehicles and smartphones. The tech billionaires demand massive, uninterrupted supply lines, but they also demand absolute, airtight, plausible deniability. They want to stand on brightly lit stages in California and proclaim to their shareholders that their products are 100% ethically sourced. You provide that illusion. You hire a private military contracting firm comprised of ex-Special Forces operators to secure your primary legal concession in the Katanga region. In reality, the corporate concession is routinely flooded with desperate artisanal miners, men, women, and children scraping the toxic dirt with their bare hands just to survive. They are a massive public relations liability. You issue a sterile corporate directive to the mercenary commander. Clear the primary extraction zone. Enforce zero tolerance for trespassers. You know exactly what those words mean to a mercenary. 3 days later, you receive a heavily encrypted incident report. The mercenaries opened fire on a crowd of artisanal miners who refused to abandon a rich cobalt vein. 42 people are dead, including children. The bodies were bulldozed into the extraction pit and covered with gravel. You read the report on your tablet while waiting for your flight in a first-class lounge at Heathrow. You do not feel a spike of horror. You do not feel your conscience tear. You calculate the exposure risk. You permanently delete the encrypted file, wipe the server logs, and immediately authorize a $2 million donation to a local Congolese educational charity. You flood the regional news cycle with press releases about your company's commitment to building schools. You protect the tech giant's stock prices and your quarterly bonus. You abandon the slaughtered families to the dirt. Level 4. You are promoted to Chief Operations Officer. You are no longer managing supply chains, you are managing sovereign nations. The newly elected Minister of Mines in the DRC announces a radical platform to nationalize the foreign-owned cobalt concessions and invite United Nations auditors to inspect the supply lines.
This policy would annihilate your company's $6 billion annual revenue stream and expose the massacres and bribes you have spent years burying. The board of directors in Geneva tasks you with resolving the political crisis. You do not attempt to negotiate with the minister. You fly to Johannesburg and arrange a clandestine meeting in a secure hotel suite with the commander of a ruthless rebel insurgency operating in the eastern provinces. You do not bring a canvas bag of cash. You bring a secure laptop. You transfer $40 million in untraceable cryptocurrency directly to the rebel commander's digital wallet. You provide him with highly classified satellite imagery of the National Army's troop deployments, purchased from a corrupt intelligence broker. You instruct the commander to launch a massive, coordinated offensive against the provincial capital. Within 2 weeks, the region erupts into a catastrophic civil war. Hundreds of thousands of terrified refugees flee their burning villages. The National Army is completely overwhelmed. The idealistic Minister of Mines is politically paralyzed and faces a total economic collapse. Desperate to maintain control of the government, he begs your company for logistical and financial assistance. You agree to bail out his government on the strict condition that he signs a 99-year unregulatable lease granting your corporation absolute sovereignty over the mining territories. He signs the papers. You stand in your corner office, holding a cup of espresso, watching the news footage of the burning cities on a flat-screen television. You protect your empire's monopoly. You abandon an entire generation of civilians to a manufactured war. Level 5. You reach the stratosphere of the corporate hierarchy. You are the president of international trade. You possess a net worth of $80 million. But absolute power operates under a microscope. An ambitious assistant United States attorney for the Southern District of New York begins a massive investigation into your corporation under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The federal prosecutors have bypassed the shell companies and secured cooperative witnesses from the European banking sector. They are preparing to unseal an indictment that will freeze the company's global assets and put the executive leadership in a federal penitentiary for the rest of their natural lives. The chief executive officer of your company, Sterling, the man who sent you that text message in the jungle 9 years ago, the mentor who taught you how to build this exact machine, summons you to his private estate. He pours you a glass of 50-year-old scotch. He speaks in carefully measured tones, explaining that the corporation needs a firewall. He tells you that the board has decided to frame the entire illicit operation as the rogue actions of a single overambitious executive. He looks you directly in the eye. He expects you to fall on your sword out of loyalty. He expects you to take a 20-year prison sentence to protect the house. You clink your glass against his. You nod solemnly. You leave his estate and immediately drive to a secure data underground facility. You access the shadow servers you have maintained for nearly a decade. You download the unredacted original ledgers, the documents bearing Sterling's personal digital signatures authorizing the $10 million warlord bribe, the mercenary deployments, and the rebel funding. You fly to Vienna and meet the federal prosecutors in a sterile conference room at the American Embassy. You slide the encrypted hard drive across the table. You negotiate absolute, ironclad federal immunity for yourself in exchange for handing them the CEO and the entire board of directors. 3 months later, the FBI raids the Geneva headquarters. Sterling is led out in handcuffs in front of international news cameras. He looks at you standing quietly in the lobby. His eyes are wide with the profound shock of absolute betrayal. You do not look away. You protect your freedom. You abandon the man who created you to a cage.
Level 6. You are the new Chief Executive Officer. The market loves a reformer. Following the federal purge, the shareholders appoint you to the throne to guide the company into a new era of transparency. You sit at the head of the polished mahogany table in Geneva. You dictate the global price of the materials that power modern civilization. The operation runs perfectly. The warlords still guard the pits. The shell companies still wash the money, and the tech billionaires still buy the product.
The only difference is that the architecture is now so flawless, so deeply embedded in the legitimate global economy that it requires absolutely no violence on your part. You do not have to order assassinations or orchestrate coups anymore. The system sustains itself automatically. The blood is washed from the cobalt before it ever reaches a spreadsheet. You spend your days attending charity galas in Paris and Davos, shaking hands with heads of state and receiving awards for your corporate philanthropic initiatives in Africa. You give speeches on sustainability. You are universally respected. You possess zero debt, limitless capital, and total impunity. But your existence is a sterilized vacuum. You travel exclusively in armored vehicles. You employ a private intelligence firm to monitor your own executives. You trust no one because you know exactly what an ambitious subordinate is capable of doing to a mentor. You have surrounded yourself with polished men and women who smile at you while silently calculating the exact price of your destruction. You cannot have a genuine conversation because every word you speak is a calculated maneuver to maintain leverage. Level 7. You are the invisible geopolitical force that governs the modern tech economy. You dictate which nations receive infrastructure investments and which factions receive the funding required to overthrow them. You operate in the blinding daylight of the global elite while ruling from the darkest shadows of the earth. But absolute power breeds absolute paralyzing paranoia. You assume every room is bugged, every phone is tapped, and every person you meet is a potential informant working for a rival corporation or a betrayed political partner. You employ a private army of ex-Mossad security contractors to sweep your penthouse twice a day. You have not spoken to a true friend in a decade. You are surrounded by heavily armed guards 24 hours a day, yet you are the loneliest man on the continent. You realize that your entire corporate organization is nothing more than a sanitized cartel. The elite billionaires and politicians designed this exact architecture to manage the extraction they refuse to look at, using your willingness to navigate the darkness to keep their hands perfectly clean. You are not a king. You are just a highly paid guard dog, forever chained to the toxic dirt, managing a slaughterhouse you can never leave. You are permanently, inextricably bound to the encrypted servers, the blackmail files, the ghost fleets, and the unending, suffocating extortion. You know that if you step away for a single second, the entire global economy you built will violently collapse, and the corporate wolves you currently hold at bay will immediately tear you to shreds to claim your empty throne. Level 8. You reside in a sprawling, multi-level fortress carved into the pristine hills overlooking Lake Geneva. You have no family that does not view you purely as a bottomless bank account. The silence of your estate is heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the climate control system and the quiet footsteps of your security detail. It is 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. You are sitting alone in your expansive study, the lights dimmed. A single glass of scotch rests on the mahogany desk. Your phone illuminates the dark room with a breaking news alert. Another massive militia offensive has swept through the North Kivu province. The death toll is estimated in the thousands. The images on the screen show burning villages and terrified refugees fleeing through the jungle. The offensive was funded by a $15 million corporate routing transfer you authorized last Thursday to secure a new, highly contested lithium deposit. You stare at the screen. The glowing light reflects in your eyes. You think back to the suffocating heat of the canvas tent 12 years ago. You remember the smell of the damp canvas and the weight of the 22-pound bag of cash. You remember Elias, the terrified 20-year-old translator whose life you thought you were protecting when you pushed the money across the table. You realize now that you never protected Elias. The warlord you funded that day took the $10 million, bought a mechanized battalion, and conscripted every young man in the district. You look at the footage of the current war, at the bodies lying in the mud, and you know with absolute crushing certainty that Elias is either dead or he is holding a rifle, burning down a village for the very same militia you just paid again. You protected nothing. You abandoned everything. You traded your peace and the lives of millions of people to reach the top of a mountain made entirely of ash. You pick up your glass of scotch. The house is completely silent. There is no one coming to arrest you. There is no one coming to punish you. You will wake up tomorrow, put on a bespoke suit, and go to work. You take a sip. You say nothing.